The full band is back together for episode 56 of the Auld Triangle with me, Ian O'Neill, Andy Stevenson, Caoilte Barra with me as always to talk about all the latest and greatest news in Irish mixed martial arts. And we've got plenty to talk about, guys. Never a problem on the Auld Triangle, is there, for us, for anything to talk on Irish MMA. How are the boys today? How are you, Andy? You're looking well. You're feeling well.
Crack?
Are you well?
Feeling well, looking well, podcasting.
You're going to be like, I heard you're going to be.
My hair is like shit today. I've got a new microphone. That's an old microphone. I was going to hold it, and I've got a fancy.
Looks like a prop out of. I was saying there before. It looks like a prop out of Star Wars.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it sounds good because it sounded like fucking shit the last few episodes. So hopefully I
do
sound a bit better to anyone listening today.
You're going to be a star. You were telling us during the week you're going to be a star in a new video coming out.
Oh, Jesus.
Throw under the bus early.
I fucking joined the gym because I'm a fat bastard now, and I noticed I was going into work the other a few weeks ago, walked up the stairs out of breath. So I was like, right, get my health in gear, join the gym. One of the first weeks I'm there, I show up. I'm the only one who shows up to the class, and it happens to be the same day they've hired a professional videographer to come in and shoot the gym. So I'm in some video. I hope it's I hope it never sees the light of day. But I'm falling over hurdles and all sorts of shit.
Fucking McGregor fast. Watch out, Andy is coming. Caoilte, how are you? It's good to have you back. Are you keeping well?
I'm back. Yeah, I'm happy now. Back to a bit of normality. Podcast again. It feels weird, lads. You take one episode off and it feels like you forget everything that you've ever done with this type of stuff. And yeah. But no, I'm delighted to be back. Always great to watch a bit of Irish MMA and kind of relax for a little while. But here we go. I'm buzzing.
It's good 100%. To have you back. We missed you.
We did miss you.
I actually didn't. I watched all of it. I missed I didn't hang on for the who took the Irish bit at the end.
Oh, you didn't?
You're probably better off.
Yeah, I didn't want to hear it butchered, to be honest with you.
Thank God, because we would have got a few angry texts from you, I'd say.
I heard you debating at the start, and I was thinking, oh, here now. It's like, what's going to happen here?
Well, we do have lots to talk about. Obviously, we'll start off with the big news and Paul Hughes signing for the PFL. Before we get into that, look at Conor McGregor's match with Michael Chandler is confirmed. We're going to chat a little bit about that as well. Ian Garry, some great wins since we've been last on for Irish across many different promotions, and a bit of action to look ahead as well. You're stuck with the three of us for the duration of the podcast today. We've got so much to talk about. Let's get going. And it is the big news, lads. Paul Hughes announced that he has signed with the PFL. First time talking about it here on the Auld Triangle. Obviously, we speculated up until now on what we would like to see, what we wouldn't like to see, and where we think he shouldn't go. Paul has made that decision. It's to the PFL. It's for a bumper contract. And the next chapter begins. I'll go to Caoilte first and get his opinions as he is back, and we're excited to have him back. I'm excited to hear what you think about Paul signing for the PFL and what it means for him and for Irish MMA.
Yeah, there's so many ways of looking at this. I guess I can probably speak for a lot of fans, everyone who kind of watches, the selfish side would have loved to see Paul Hughes in the UFC if there was an offer on the table. Who knows if there was or wasn't. But happy to hear he's got a good contract and he's being taken care of. Cash is king. It's prize fighting at the end of the day. You need to take care. You need to be able to buy a house, look after yourself, plan for the future. And if PFL are offering that, you can't really say no. Who wants to go in on a starter contract to the likes of the UFC and not make that money? So the signing for the PFL, although I would have loved to see him in the UFC, I think it could actually, it's not the end of that. He could end up there eventually, but signing for the PFL is, massive financially, and it could really help. Build him like they built Brendan Loughnane, for example, and that worldwide name. And I feel like it could be one of those situations, especially going into the $1 million tournament. From an Irish MMA perspective, we've got someone from another gym. There's none of that. It's an SBG show talk anymore when we've got big news Paul Hughes on the card. And I think that'll take away that talking point or that focal point that's been around those cards for so long now, and hopefully open kind of the gates for more fighters from the likes of FAI, Team Rhino to get signed up by the PFL as well. So lots of positives to take. I think there's a lot more positives than negatives. I think the negatives are just a bit more selfish what we would have liked to have seen. But lots of positives, and brilliant to see him get snapped up by a big organisation, and hopefully get some really good opportunities, which already seems like he's going to get.
Very well said. And I think you used one word there, and it was selfish. And that's exactly how I looked at it as well. Because selfishly, I would have hoped to see him going in there, because I thought he had the capabilities of going in there and mixing it up with the UFC stars. But like I said, and I tweeted it out, I was talking to a lot of people, what I want personally in comparison to what Paul needs for himself are completely different. You know what I mean? And I think that he's made the best choice for himself right now in joining up with the PFL, getting that pay packet. Opens up lots of different avenues as well, which I'm sure we'll get into in a little bit, Andy. Just maybe your thoughts on that. Are they similar to myself and Caoilte's? We're happy for Paul. Obviously, there always was that want and to see him up there in the UFC, in the Oktagon. But at the end of the day, the dust has settled now a little bit. It makes sense really for everybody, but for both Paul Hughes as a fighter and his growth and his financial stability. It also works very well for PFL to sign such a big star like Paul as well. So I think this is a partnership that really works for both. And, I'll let you talk and then I'll share maybe other opinions after that. Sorry.
No, you're all good. Yeah, I feel the same way that you lads do. Selfishly, I would have loved to seen him in the UFC, but that's not to say that it's still not a very exciting signing. Look, Paul spoke to me about the fact that, he talked about seeing Ryan Curtis and the effect that has had on him and what he values out of his career, and not wanted to end up with a load of brain damage and nothing in his bank account. And I noticed, I think it was Andy Hickey put up the pay last night between the bare knuckle and UFC 298 because California released it, and you're looking at guys like Oban Elliott who are making 10k. So we don't know currently what the offer that the UFC came to Paul with, but there's a possibility that it was just a flat, you're going to come in bottom of the rung.
It was a shite offer. Let's be real, because that's what the UFC are doing these days.
Yeah.
They're, that's the kind of business structure that they're operating on, and I think that's a crying shame. And I don't think. There's only one person to blame, and that is the UFC for Paul not signing for the UFC. And, you can't really discredit him at all for making the decision that he made. It's a problem that many fighters are faced with looking to sign with the UFC. And, geez, I could go on for a rant about this for an hour, to be honest. This is kind of in correlation for me with the introduction of Dana White's Contender Series, which is, in some terms, a modern-day Ultimate Fighter in terms of they're using Dana White's Contender Series to tie up these fighters, get them there fighting on the Contender Series for a lot cheaper than what they would be if they were, signing for the UFC straight up and having a fight that way. Because many of the fights that we do see guys on the Contender Series, they would be UFC quality fights, but unfortunately one person goes on and one person doesn't get the contract. And, when they do get the contract, it's another kind of a form of, lowballing a fighter at an entry level into the UFC. And, some fighters are happy to take that and other fighters are not. And that's just the nature of the business that we're in. But, when we're talking about tough contracts and, if, it hasn't been, tough isn't talked about all of that much, but the winner of tough is tied in to what they say is a 6-figure contract. That's what the winner of the Ultimate Fighter gets. But that 6-figure contract is over the course of 6 to 8 fights and breaks down to pretty much the minimum base pay as well. So, the big story back in the day was Brendan Shaw back saying that he was on fighting the likes of Nogueira and the Crow Cops on very minimal pay packets for win and show money. So, that's what Paul does not want to do here. And you can't fault him for that whatsoever. And I think if we're going to get angry at anybody, we need to get angry at the UFC for, approaching fighters. And it's not only Paul that has been affected by this as well, but we say affected. I mean, he hasn't been affected. He's gone on somewhere else. He's getting paid more money, Andy. I mean,
yeah, but that's the thing. In the same list of salaries that I was referencing there that Forbes initially reported on after UFC 298, you look at Ian Garry, that was his 7th UFC fight and he's making 50 and 50. And look, it's not nothing, but at the same time, you would expect 7 fights into your UFC career to be making a little bit more than that. So there's lads who have gone in to Bellator, I know, and have made that money flat maybe not 50-50, but like 50k flat in the Bellator area. And I don't know what Paul got from PFL. From reports, you hear like the lads like Gegard Mousasi talking about the fact that PFL are maybe not looking to pay what Bellator once were paying and things like this. But he definitely is getting paid a lot more money than he would have been in the UFC under the PFL banner. And I think it's exciting from their sense of, he spent the last number of years fighting under Cage Warriors for not a lot of money, but building his name, building his brand, developing his skill set, and really coming out as an incredibly hot prospect. And now we're going to see him probably for the next maybe 3 fights, most likely, I would imagine, on Irish shows, or maybe, well, it depends on how many Irish shows they have, I suppose, but definitely I would say they got to get him on that Dublin card in June. Sure. So we'll see him in bigger stadiums in Ireland. Where we had him in the RDSs, now we'll get to see him, maybe in a 10,000 seater stadium or these type of things. So yeah, I'm not sure which way we want to take this, but it is very exciting still.
I'd have an idea where I'd like to take it, and that's Paul. We know that Paul Hughes signing with the PFL, that he is going to live up to his end of the bargain, and he's going to go in there each and every time, as we've seen so far in his career, and produce high-level performances. And now I put it to the PFL that they have to live up to their side of the bargain as well. And they're after making promises to Paul. I'm sure, there's been a lot of chat behind the scenes, and Paul is a very intelligent fella and knows what he wants and knows what he needs. And I can guarantee you that, he was making a few guarantees, as he should, when you're negotiating a contract. He's telling us that he's going to be fighting 3 times this year. I don't know if they're not going to be all on Irish shows, that's for sure, because we have the Bellator Dublin show in June. There's been nothing else announced for later on in the year as of yet. Not hearing anything on the grapevine that there is any plans either to come back after this June event either, but that may change, and we have seen things like that change before. But there is a slight little bit of a worry from what I've seen. I've been following the PFL and chatting about the PFL for a good few years, been watching it since 2018 when they're kind of introduced the league format and kind of made waves with that. They have mismanaged some stars. They're not all perfect themselves, They offer more money, but I hope that they can do justice for Paul and match him with good fights, match him in intriguing fights for the fans, and ones that will help build him as a fighter and build his star power as well. And I hope that they match him regularly, because, the big promises that we've been hearing from the PFL, Francis Ngannou is the guy that they've been talking about time and time again. We still haven't seen him yet. Jake Paul, another guy, that they've been promising to the fans. We still haven't seen him yet. So they are making promises. They're talking a big game, and I just want to see a little bit of action from the PFL overall, not only with just Paul Hughes's situation, but overall in general. And, we've complained time and time again here about certain matchmaking for Irish fighters here under the Bellator ranks as well. And I hope that, it is a transitional period right now for PFL, obviously after the acquisition of Bellator. So maybe they're still figuring things out, but, MMA moves fast, and you kind of got to kind of keep the ball rolling, Caoilte. Would you be as, apprehensive a little bit about certain things that I spoke about there, or am I being a little bit overcritical in PFL in your opinion?
Nah, perfectly fine, to be honest with you. Like, they don't always deliver. I think there's a lot of things at the PFL that we can criticize of how they manage certain aspects including fight announcements, matchmaking, and everything of the sort. So it's very fair to be skeptical of these things when you see how it's being run on a day-to-day basis, really, from our perspective anyway. But in terms of how they're going to match him and if they're going to live up to that promise, I feel like when they have someone like Paul Hughes and someone the hottest free agent around, they come up with this big announcement video, everything of the sorts, I feel like their back is to the wall on this one. They have to live up to it, because if they don't, it's like they just fall on their arse and you do all this build up and then you don't really show the fans that you're
already kind of slightly messed, not slightly, they already messed up that announcement, to be honest. They can blame Ray Steph.
In fairness, the video was very good. Like, if Stefan had just said nothing,
it's just it wasn't a surprise. Like, you know what I mean? I don't think, I think we all knew, we had heard chit chat behind the scenes, no matter what we were saying. The chit chat and the word was for quite some time that Paul was going to be signing for the PFL. So it didn't come as too big of a surprise. There was always that wonder with free agency. All right, would the UFC come in? But I think everybody that knows what way the structure is wasn't really expecting too much, Andy. But Caoilte did mention about who we match him up with. And I think who we match him up with is very, very important, especially in the early days, because I would argue we've seen him in 2 showcase fights in the last year. I'm not interested in seeing him showcase his abilities. We know he's fucking good. We know he's world class. So I'm of the opinion that we need to be putting him in there with good level competition now. But as you said, very rightly so, and yourself and PT and the lads were talking on the crack about it, is that opponents are few and far between right now, and the timing of this isn't really perfect. And I know you had mentioned a couple of names, and have you thought about it anymore, who you'd like to kind of see him in there? I want to see him against a veteran,
Forget any. I said Alfie Davis in the crack. Forget about that, because I can't remember who it was. So whoever, if you're listening and you responded on Twitter and put Shane Burgos' name out into the ether, that is the fight that I want, because that's the type of fight you want to see him in. Shane Burgos, I don't see as the top tier elite level in world MMA. I think he's a brilliant fighter. I think he's a dangerous fighter, heavy hands. He'll stand toe to toe with Paul on the feet. But he's a UFC name, a UFC veteran. He's been in the PFL. I think he's still with the PFL. It's kind of hard to tell sometimes.
He is with it, and he's not in the league this year either. So
and he hasn't fought since last year either.
Yeah.
So someone like him, get him over to Dublin, because I think look, first and foremost, you bring Paul Hughes out in a prominent spot on the Bellator Dublin card in June would be my expectation. You put your Irish star in the Irish market, and then whether you get him on PFL cards or Bellator cards after that, between now and the 2025 tournament, which is when he's set to debut in the tournament by all accounts. It's interesting. Like I'm very curious to understand how they are going to match him and what way they're going to do it, because I don't really know what to expect between now. Obviously, I know what to expect once he gets in the tournament, but the issue for me is just that there's so many lads that are locked into a tournament now. They're probably off the table. So all the lads you kind of want to see him in against are locked into a tournament format where Paul is not in that tournament yet.
Yeah, it is a tricky one now for them, and we've seen lots of comparisons to what they've done with Cedric Doumbé, but I would argue that Paul has already gone ahead of Cedric Doumbé, a guy who still is like 5-1 or 6-1, whatever he is right now. But I think Paul is a well more established mixed martial artist, and I think his ceiling is much higher than what Cedric Doumbé is in terms of overall skill set, for sure. And I think we don't need to see him in there we had a little bit of laugh and a joke about the Alfie Davis call out, and look, it's a good fight on paper and Alfie Davis will bring him, but if we're being real and not being Irish biased, if we're being truly real, Paul should wipe the floor with a guy like Alfie Davis. That's what would be my expectation, and it just doesn't really get me intrigued to see something that I would be expecting to see. You put in somebody with the veteran savvy of someone like Shane Burgos or someone along those lines, that's a UFC veteran. That's a veteran test as well for Paul, and it's a guy that could cause him some problems too. And I mean, that
you said to me Jeremy Stephens as well, I think. Jeremy actually, Stephens is a
good one, and like I don't know if he is still with the PFL. I know he's done a bit of bare knuckle, but fucking bring him back for a fight. Bring him back for a 1-fight deal. Bring him back to Dublin. He loved the Irish crowd. Gets to fight Paul Hughes. Perfect fight. That former hardest hitting featherweight in the world, now the current hardest hitting lightweight in the world. I mean, that's a name, isn't it? It's the name that will get you excited.
So do you know the way we're talking about like veterans or like lads who have their names? There is another lad who's like free agent, and I would be. The way you've seen Paul Hughes get snapped up by the PFL, I'd be kind of expecting them to do the same with Saladin and Parnasse.
Yes.
Like that's the kind of the writings.
Well, that's my number one pick, to be honest.
But so would you want that like right away, or would you want to save that for later on? Just because then you've got 2 prospects going head to like.
But we've already got what we have right. Well, I say what we have right now, and I'm not arguing the fact that if you hold off on the Parnasse fight, that it could be a little bit bigger and have a little bit more meaning. But what you have currently right now in Paul Hughes and Saladin Parnasse is two of the best prospects in the whole of Europe right now. And both of them will say that they are the best. And both of them have been forging their path in different organizations. Now let's just bring them together and see who is the best. Like, why wait? We're going to find out then. I'd rather find out now rather than find out then. That's my personal opinion. And I understand, people want to say, oh, bring him in and kind of give him, an easier matchup next. I'm saying, fuck it. Paul has said to us, and Paul has said to himself that he wants to prove that he's the best in the world. If we're going to stay giving him showcase fights for the next year against relatively unknown opposition, it's not going to do anything for anybody really. Only kind of get a couple more wins, I would imagine, on Paul's record, which is not the worst thing in the world. But I'm like, this is a new chapter. Let's fucking start this with a bang, like.
That'd be some fucking statement, wouldn't it? Like, you're tickling me bollocks here. I was like, maybe keep these away from each other. And then as you start speaking about it, I'm like, oh my God, I need to see this fight.
It's like that's what it is. Like, I mean, Parnasse has been killing it on the scene the same way as Paul Hughes has. And I mean,
and the two of them, like, Parnasse has gone up weight classes and he's lost, and he's come back with a win, and now he's like, so it's not like they're not even, the losses almost, not that they don't matter, but like, to be honest, the
way I look at it as well, and look, you could build it up, you could build that fight a little bit, but like, it's not always best to play the waiting game in mixed martial arts because it moves very quickly, and an injury or something else could happen, or maybe a loss could happen. You never know what might happen. If a fight is there and it's ready to go, you should always make it. Oh, going to my head, I probably don't think that will happen, but I'd love to see, like, if you were to ask me of anybody else right now for Paul Hughes, Saladin Parnasse is number one. And then number two, get in the likes of a Jeremy Stevens or Burgos or somebody like that. Or at the very most, set him up with a good fight for Dublin, line him up with a Parnasse fight next, line him up with a veteran test right before the league starts next year. And then that's, he's going to have to get primed up for this league. This league is going to be no joke, boys. Like, good competition in there, and one of the toughest tournaments in mixed martial arts. They, in fairness, PFL say that, and I can genuinely say that I would really stand true to those words, because you're fighting in such quick succession, 8 to 10 weeks at a time. You're not getting any downtime. You're going straight from a fight back into the gym. We've heard Brendan Loughnane talking about, we've heard a lot of fighters talking about, it's not easy to go in there and stay competing time and time again in quick succession, where you could have up to about 4 fights in about 4 or 5 months, I guess, from June until the end of the year. So that's another thing that you have to get yourself primed up and ready to go for that tournament as well, if you're Paul.
A quick name no one's mentioned, I'm not too sure why, if it's injury, but I remember when PFL signed Anthony Romero as one of the hottest prospects coming from Canada. I might divide your allegiances there, Ian. And and he was booked to fight. Was it
my two fellow countrymen, actually?
There you go.
Two bastards.
So it's one of those fights. He's a top prospect. He was looking to be an alternate in the tournament before the Espinosa fight didn't happen. So he's in that kind of middle ground, waiting for next year, potentially getting into the tournament, unless something's changed that I've missed over the last 3 weeks. But I feel like top prospect, brilliant record, fought Aubin Mercier in his last fight. I know he lost, but he's one of those top prospects that they've signed that is that upper. Maybe it's not a Saladin Parnasse fight or Saladin Parnasse fight. It is maybe around that level, maybe a step below, but I think it's a top level fight. That'd be really that preparing you for the tournament. So I think it was. It's one that no one's mentioned, but he was. And
I wonder, like, as well, that could be a good fight you could put together on a US card. But I think if you're doing Bellator in Dublin, get the fucking 2 top prospects in the lightweight in Europe, and let's have it.
Yoel Romero, let's do it. Never mind Anthony Romero. Yoel Romero.
He's not come out with an Irish fighter for him to fight.
See, the thing is, though, there's not, because I was curious to get your last thoughts. There's not an Irish fighter other than Peter Queally that, like, I think you would match with Paul right now, because like there's loads of lads who are kind of maybe 5 fights behind Paul where he's at, but there's not like you think of like a Dara Kelly, but like Dara Kelly's way earlier on in his career than than Paul.
Yeah, and like I don't know
No, you're
even
right.
if we're going to, if you should even go down pitting him against Irish-based talent either. You know, I wonder if the PFL will be looking to try and build all that talent together. I heard Peter Creeley's mentioned a couple of times that that's an interesting fight for Paul, all right, but I'd prefer to see Paul against non-Irish competition. But that's just me right now. But for another fighter, I might be saying, hell yeah, put him in there with them. Look, it's good. They're good conversations to have, and I'm sure, you know, there's lots of talks going on behind the scenes. And what this does, like I said, it's the start of a new chapter, but it really, you know, we put the full stop on the last chapter. We don't have to, you know, cry or give out about what him going to the UFC or getting his next shot or whatever. It's there. It's here now. We can just enjoy what the future is, and hopefully it's a successful stint with the PFL for Paul overall.
You'll be damn sure that if Dylan Took gets a win next month, I would be shocked if he's not calling for that fight. He's a man who likes a bit of Irish on Irish violence. They've fought before. I would not be surprised to hear Dylan Took calling out Paul Hughes in a little bit if he gets through his next one.
100%. It'd be interesting, but we digress. 25 minutes. We could go 25 more on that topic, but we must move on and talk about another big Irish superstar, and that's Conor McGregor. His fight is confirmed. UFC 303, June 29th. The Mac is back, and yeah, I guess, you know, all the wonder is over. Will he? I was never one of these people that were saying that he was never going to fight again. I always truly felt that he was going to fight again, although we're still 9 weeks away. There's a lot to go. But how are we feeling? I'll go to Caoilte first. How are you feeling about this fight? Are you excited? Are you looking forward to it? What are the expectations, Caoilte? Are you heading into this one with Michael Chandler?
It's weird. I don't feel like it's kicked in just yet. That whole between the promotion, the build up, none of it feels like it's kicked in. I feel like I'm gonna have to wait a few weeks to get a bit more excited. Delighted that's happening. I'm seeing, you see Conor and he's off with all these different other escapades of his businesses that it's if I'm always looking for stuff for the fight, but I see stuff about whatever it may be, forced out and so on. So must be one of the busiest men around along with training. So that must be quite the difficult thing to balance. But give it a few weeks and I think I'll be a bit more excited. But as of now, I just don't know what it is, lads. It's not set. It's just not settled in. I'm buzzing that's happening, but that real McGregor fight week or build-up anticipation, just I've not gotten it yet. But I think it'll take a little bit of time. I don't know what it is.
It will, but we haven't really seen, word is he's been training quite hard for the last number of weeks, but we were seeing him out there promoting the Forged Irish South. We see him out there with the Bare Knuckle FC and buying that as well. So, those are things that are distractions 9 weeks out to a fight, looking from the outside in. Now, when is this camp starting for real? When will it be a full dedication? Because you're going to have to give a full dedication of a camp if you want to go in and give yourself any chance at all. But I would say I'm excited for his comeback. I think in general for mixed martial arts, and especially for Irish mixed martial arts as well, having Conor there on the big scene is always going to be a bonus. It's strange that, the first kind of, if you want to call it a wave, it was kind of led by Conor McGregor in certain terms, with the likes of Paddy Houlihan, Cathal Pendred, Chris Fields, all the rest of the guys who were following him up along, Neil Seary and the likes. The first time he was kind of rising, and this is strange that we're kind of coming into this next kind of, if you want to call it a wave in Irish mixed martial arts. Ian Garry is there as well. We got other fighters kind of fighting in other organizations, but obviously Reese and Caelan and Sean are now in the UFC as well, and be interesting to see if Conor kind of takes the new breed of Irish fighters under the wing and kind of helps build and promote Irish mixed martial arts, because I think he's done a quite good job, in certain terms, not in all terms, I guess, but in certain terms, to try and help build the sport and help up and coming fighters kind of get their shine as well. We've seen it with Ian Garry. It'd be interesting to see if there is any other fighters on that card as well, which we'll talk about in just a minute. Andy, what's your excitement levels heading into this one? 9 weeks away now. We'll get to see him back in there again after such a horrible injury.
Yeah, I mean, look, the sport is always better when Conor McGregor's back fighting. I don't think there's any denying that. And I'm excited to see him back. It's not the same for me as it was. Like, it's a different kind of excitement. It's not the excitement that I had back, when he was on his initial ascent in the UFC. It's now I'm viewing it through the lens of, where is this guy at? Where is Conor McGregor at from a sporting perspective? What's his level? He's going in against a guy who's incredibly dangerous in Michael Chandler, who, if you'd asked me how a fight between the two of them goes down, say 5 years ago, McGregor in his pomp, I'd say McGregor absolutely wipes the floor with him, absolutely dusts him with ease. Now I'm looking at it thinking, what kind of Conor McGregor's coming in here? And I have the same questions as kind of what you're kind of referencing there, where, I spoke with John Kavanagh there the other week, and I asked him, how much has he been training? Is he putting the other business stuff aside, the proper 12, the forged Irish Stout, all that stuff? And he's saying, Conor, he kind of answered it in a way where he's saying Conor's great at compartmentalizing, and when he's on, and when he's off, he's off doing whatever. But I don't think that you can just compartmentalize and take that approach when it comes to a training camp. So I would love to see all that other stuff go away now. Like, we are still seeing videos coming out of him in pubs, and I don't know how much he's drinking. Like, you see him taking sips of beers. I don't know if he's on a full night out, or if he's just having a sip for a camera, or what. But you can't have it both ways when you're going in for a fight camp to face Michael Chandler, because you're especially coming back from a leg break. You haven't fought in 3 years at the time. When you get into the cage, it'll be 3 years since his last fight, where he had a horrific injury that he's been coming back from. So
I think if you nail that point down alone, the fact that he's been able to work himself into a position to get back, that is a horrible, horrible injury that he suffered. And you know what, you talk about comeback and everything like that. Coming back and competing, it can be classed as a comeback, but I don't think Conor will class it truly as a comeback unless he comes back and gets his hand raised. Look, we've spoken to many a fighter, and looking from the outside in, especially in the fight game, boys, you're either all in or you're all out. Like, you have to be all in and dedicated to your camps. You have to be putting it all in on your sessions or your training camps, or you're going to get found out come to fight time. So maybe the lack of excitement right now is that we haven't seen him maybe, commit to that full camp or that fight camp yet. I know that there has been a level of training that's happening, but, when I talked about this at the start of the year, I think me and Sean were talking about it on, I can't remember what podcast it was. I think it was when he had made the announcement that it was going to be on the 29th. What I would like to see, and what Sean was kind of saying as well, and, the approach is, you train for 8 weeks to get yourself ready for an 8 to 12 week camp. So you've got to get yourself into kind of camp shape, and then you've got to get yourself into fight shape. And with such an injury and with the movie and everything else that's going on, I don't know whether Conor has had the time to do that. And we're not going to be able to really find that full assessment on whether he has or whether he hasn't until we get in there and see him competing. But early signs there's that, the business dealings, the forged stout, everything like that, he is sharing a level of focus to that. And I'm looking forward, and maybe it'll come next week. Maybe it'll already have happened by the time this podcast comes out. And I think once we see that Caoilte, I think that's when the excitement levels will start increasing and increasing and increasing. And you're going to hear, how is he looking in training? And there'll be chit chat in the background and all of this kind of stuff. But one way or another, the excitement is going to come. I think fight week, you'll always bring excitement. It always does. And I think even with Conor's last fight with Dustin, I kind of felt we've all been there. We've all been there and experienced what it was like in the come up and how exciting it was. And don't think it will ever get to that again. But we haven't been in a world where Conor McGregor has been winning in mixed martial arts in quite some time, to be honest. And, I'm very curious what a mixed martial arts world looks like if he does manage to go in there, get his hand raised against Michael Chandler. And like Andy said, I agree 100%. 5 years ago, this is like a blueprint opponent for Conor McGregor. A stocky wrestle boxer that's, Conor's just going to have to stuff takedowns and land his shots. But, we're up 2 weight classes now. I think John was citing the Chad Mendes fight. been a lot of moving and shaking since that Chad Mendes fight in both Conor's mixed martial arts world. The level of where his body is at, he's gone through years and years of hardship, guys, and something has to give sometimes. But look at overall, all in all, Conor McGregor back is going to be good for Irish MMA. I think it's going to be good for MMA in general. It always brings an extra spotlight on it. And I'm hoping that we get to see, I can't remember who was, I think it was Harry that might have been saying it, like, what Conor are we going to see? Obviously we saw the young
his stance.
Yeah. But even in terms of personality, we've seen the nice McGregor, we've seen the angry McGregor, we've seen the young hungry McGregor. What McGregor are we going
Which haircut? Which haircut's it going to be? Is it bald McGregor? No, for the love of God, Conor, don't shave your head.
Indeed. But
I love how people go so in depth in the tiniest of details he has in his fights. It's brilliant.
It's hilarious. It's hilarious.
Just before we're in it, because you're right though. Like, you want to see the clips coming out of the training, of the sparring, of the little glimpse of, oh Jesus, Conor looks fucking good here. Like, could we see the old Conor, come back? You want to hear? I remember Melvin Manhu, head of one of the Bellator Dublin events at the media day, he was like, I can't remember the number. He was like, I KO'd like 7 training partners in the lead up to this one. I was like, oh my God, that's insane.
That's exactly what you want to hear.
Which is a terrible thing to hear from a training partner, but like at the same time, you kind of want to hear those like mad stories coming out of the camp and
yeah, you do, or you want to see those little snippets. And look at, I'm not saying that he's not working hard right now, but we haven't seen too much. We've seen an odd little clip here and there, but is he going to travel away for a camp? Who's going to be over there? Who's the sparring partners going to be? Look, those are all little intricacies that make the fight exciting, make us kind of question this and that. We'll help build the excitement. But look, I was worth to mention today, talk about Conor McGregor. I think we can all hold our hands high and say we're running an Irish MMA podcast here, and we don't rely on talking about Conor McGregor. It's Conor McGregor will always bring the clicks and always bring the views and stuff like that, but he hasn't been around. We haven't been talking about him, and he's back around now again, and it's kind of exciting that we'll get to break down fights and break down his camp and do all this on the Ould Triangle, and we'll continue to do that as well, I'm sure, over the coming weeks as well as he gets prepared. A guy that is trying really, really hard to get on the card as well is Ian Machado Garry. He's looking to fight Colby Covington on that card. He has signed a contract right now. He's saying that Colby has not signed a contract. Ian has taken a hell of a lot of criticism over the last year, but the way he has handled this whole Colby Covington thing, in number one, calling him out, number one, making him accountable for his shit talk, and number 3, putting the pressure on him to sign a contract. Because you can talk all this jip all you want, but if there's a contract in front of you and you're not signing it, I mean, that's detrimental to me, to another fighter, and that's good cannon fodder for Ian Garry to come at Colby Covington. Andy, what are your thoughts on this whole situation, and do you think the fight is actually going to happen?
Oh, Jesus, do I think it's going to happen? I don't know, because
I don't know if it is as well. I'm not confident.
He's going hard on social media to try and campaign for this, or at least not even. It's not to campaign. It's to, as you said, put the pressure on and to make the public aware. I am doing everything in my power to make this fight happen. But it's given the fact that he's putting out a number of videos now. It to me, that doesn't speak that it's going well as far as getting Colby to sign on the dotted line. Now, do I think it happens? I hope it does. I've no insight of. I don't know, but I really hope it does, because I think it's a great fight. I know. I just think it's a great fight. I think it's I think it's a winnable fight for Ian. I think it's that fight against that name that kind of gets you to the next level where you're now in as a title contention, and you also don't have to go through the likes of the Shavkats in this fight anyway. I'm sure you will at some point, but you overcome that kind of the next test, the wrestler or whatever it may be. But really, it's about Colby Covington's name and his notoriety, I guess, in the sport.
And the hype that will come with it, whether you love or whether you hate Colby as well. It's like, that's the way it is, Caoilte. He's going to bring the numbers. He's going to bring, like, imagine Ian, Colby, Conor, all in a one press conference. Like, I mean, that's organized chaos, really, when you think of it. But I think no matter what, Caoilte, no matter who the opponent is, I think Ian Garry needs to be on this card to help you star power. It's like a great story that you could tell a guy that you're being influenced in, in Conor McGregor. He's the reason Ian has been fighting. Sharing a card with him is probably a dream come true for Ian. It'll bring great eyes. It will endear him maybe to the Irish audience a little bit more than what's been happening lately as well. If it's not Colby, is there anybody else that you would tickle your fancy? I mean, the choices are endless, but I think there's a real possibility, guys, that it's not going to be Colby. I wish it is. I hope something changes.
Really?
I really do. I don't think Colby is going to want to take it. He's off breaking his foot. How ready would he be for a fight? Like, he's going to have to, like, Ian Garry is a really tough test for a guy like Colby Covington at this stage of his career. I think, Ian has the upper hand in a couple of different departments there. And I think if you're Colby Covington, you're really going to have to be 100% coming in here. And if you're not, you're not going to give a good account of yourself. So I hope it happens, but I'm really genuinely leaning on it not happening now. 9 weeks out. Remember, we're only 9 weeks away now, so time is a ticking. Is there any other kind of names that would tickle your fancy for Ian Garry? Because I think it's an absolute must that he gets on this card.
It's a must that he gets on it. It's funny because I was more so focused on the point that I actually think this fight is probably going to happen. I can see more reasons to even an injured Colby Covington, or maybe not 100%. I still think he'd take it. He's been the big chat about it beforehand, trying to call out Ian Garry. I can see him being the type to keep you waiting on his terms. Colby Covington does what Colby Covington wants. He'll sign that contract when he wants to, and just really frustrate Ian and try and use it as a mind game. But also the fact that I could see, to play a very good different route of it completely, I could see him looking at that opportunity and thinking, if Chandler pulls out, who's the first man they're going to call? And what's the biggest payday? Just very, very far-fetched, maybe. But if someone does pull out, they're going to need someone to fill into that main event slot. And if you're a welterweight, you've got a big name, you can chat a lot of shit. Probably going to be the first man they call, regardless of if Ian Garry's on that card or not. That's why there's a few different things I do think why Colby Covington would sign the contract to fight Ian Garry. That may not just be to do with Ian Garry, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, that's a great shout, to be honest.
Very good shout, yeah. Very good shout.
He's a bad guy, and bad guys they think in different ways. They like these different. They don't look at it straightforward. They think of all the different parts, and that's why I think it's going to happen. To be honest, and I've had so bit focus on that fight happening as a result of all this. But yeah.
Could you imagine if let's say fantasy world here, right? Something happens to Michael Chandler in the lead up. Does Ian Garry call for the Conor McGregor fight?
Stuff. I could. I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think it'd happen.
Joking aside, so what you said there, Ian, about endearing himself to the Irish fan base, that is potentially even more important here. It's almost more important that Ian gets on this UFC 303 card than he does face Colby Covington, because I don't think it's even just endearing himself to the Irish fan base. There's a lot of Irish fans who are casual UFC fans, may have watched during the McGregor era, who will watch Conor's return, but don't know about Ian Garry.
That's why I feel it's important for him to be actually on the card, no matter who the opponent is. I think it's very important for him and his brand, to be honest.
And the same with any other Irish. Like, there's obviously a number of other Irish UFC fighters that I think this Conor to get on this one.
Yeah, this Conor card is kind of maybe putting a spanner in the works for this upcoming Manchester card as well, in terms of, maybe Irish talent wanting to fight. Look, we have Kiefer, we have Caoilte, we have Reese, we have Shauna, all there. I'm sure they'd love to be on a Conor McGregor card. I'm not sure if the UFC will want to bring that talent over there and fly them across, where they can probably just put North American talent there. There's fucking mock cards going up that is kind of half right, half not right, and no Irish stars appear on that. Look, Tiarnan Loughran, speaking with him a couple of weeks back, said he's already been called for the Manchester card. I think, Sean, without having any confirmation, Shauna Banning has some eyes on that Manchester card as well. And Kiefer Crosby and Chris Duncan are kind of going at loggerheads there online as well. And looking
online.
Yeah, so...
It's been happening for about 4 years now.
I would say that I'd be very confident in seeing a good few Irish on that Manchester card, but at the same time, with the announcement of this Conor card, it might put a spanner in the works. And if you're UFC, it wouldn't be the worst idea in the world to lump a bunch of Irish over there to try and capture the imagination of the Irish audience, get them back over to Vegas as well. So, I mean, fucking, it's great that we're even able to have these conversations when you really take a step back and think about it, like all the Irish heading to the UFC, all the options that we have, and the future that's going to be. I do fear with Ian Garry, with the fight with Colby Covington, if it doesn't happen in Dublin, who are we going to rely on to bring that show to Dublin if it's not going to be Ian Garry? That would be no, it doesn't have to be an Irish star.
Right.
That was one of my arguments why I did want to see Paul Hughes. Let's not go there again. Let's not open up that.
But before we wrap up the Ian Garry stuff, Ian, because you asked the question and then we neither of us answered you. But I'm curious to know what you would pick if he doesn't get the Colby fight. Who do you want to see him up against?
It's difficult right now because a lot of kind of fighters are tied up. So if you're looking at let me bring up the rankings real quick. But off the top of my head, you look at Leon and Bilal is likely going to be going down at that Manchester card. So obviously, and they wouldn't make that anyway. So the guys you're looking at are Shavkat Rakhmonov is a big one, but I don't know. I think Shavkat hurt himself in his last fight, so I don't know whether he would be ready. That's a really difficult fight for Ian as well. Gilbert Burns is a former training partner and very friendly with him, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think that's going to happen. Colby Covington is obviously the obvious choice. He's number 4 right now. There's 2 people that I'm looking at that make sense right now. 3 people really. And the 3 of them are Sean Brady, Jack Della Maddalena, or MVP. Those are my top 3 that you go in there. And if I was to pick any of those fighters, I would pick Jack Della Maddalena to go in there.
It's a banger. It's a banger.
And especially after his last performance over Gilbert Burns, I think, I would have picked Ian. I probably still would pick Ian for that fight, but that fight is a hell of a lot more intriguing right now to me. And Jack Della Maddalena is a mad bastard as well. He'll jump in there 8 or 9 weeks notice and take on someone like Ian Garry as well. I like the Sean Brady fight, but I think Ian will beat Sean Brady, I think, fairly easily, to be honest. Not fairly easy, might be a bit disrespectful, but I think it's not a fight that intrigues me as much as a Jack Della Maddalena. I think Ian wants to fight up rather than fighting down, and I think he's earned that right to want to fight up rather than fight down. So if it's not Colby Covington, to answer your question, Jack Della Maddalena is the fight for me. I would like to see MVP as well. I think that's an interesting fight, but I think I kind of have somewhat of an understanding of what Ian is saying when it comes to MVP. I know he was completely disregarding his win and his skill set, and I think that was a little bit disrespectful, but I'd like to see maybe MVP get 1 fight more or maybe 2 fights more and work towards that Ian Garry fight. He's ranked number 13 at the minute, and I think Ian has given himself the right to fight up in the division rather than fight down in the division. So I guess the answer would be Jack Della Maddalena if it wasn't Colby Covington.
Jeez, that'd be some scrap. All these could be headliners as well for like fight nights or What happens if it doesn't work out for a Conor card, right? You don't do the Conor card, and then you either bring the Colby Covington fight or the Jack Della Maddalena fight to Dublin in December. Let's do that.
Sure. Let's do that.
I'll take that.
Wishful fucking thinking there, guys. But anyway, we move on. We've been talking about a lot of the big hitters. Let's move on, talk about more regional and some Irish that were taking part in a lot of fights over this past weekend, or the weekend just gone. Went 5-0 weekend over, where we had Gerard Burns, Will Fleury, Denis Frimpong. We also had Tiarnan Loughran and Andreas Binder as well. All pick up wins on the scene. A great win, great kind of couple of days for Irish MMA. Let's start off with Gerard Burns. First round TKO win over Daniel Spilojaric at Brave in Slovenia. This guy looked like a decent opponent for Gerard Burns, but he went out there, Andy, and put on a showing, and was creating a little bit of hype now. We were talking about Gerard in the fact that he's made the decision to go over to Brave, you're not going to be matched easy over there. But he's going out there and he's taking guys out in one round, and he's causing right a good stir. He's getting all the plaudits from the owners of Brave as well, and is forging a path towards the title over there in the flyweight division, isn't he, Andy?
Yeah, Gerard Burns looks a savage. Like you see his teammates and his coaches talking about this. You know, he's a flyweight with heavyweight KO power, and by God, he certainly looks like he hits hard, because this lad Daniels Spoljaric was kind of giving him everything that he could in the first. I mean, well, it only lasted a round, but earlier in the first round, like, he was landing some heavy shots. He was landing the spinning back kick, and Gerard Burns just walked through it. He just ate them, walked straight through him, and then caught him with a body shot. And it was almost like, you know, this lad had been throwing the kitchen sink at Burns and not even making him flinch. And next thing, Burns lands a body shot, and the lad's down, and he's landing shot after shot after shot, and just heavy ground and pound. Burns looks a terror in there. He obviously, in the end, the finish came by way of, he tapped his strikes. The referee did a very poor job, in my opinion. It was
terrible.
It was a late stoppage, in my opinion, and even after he had tapped the strikes, the ref didn't seem to notice it. But the statement that this makes, to not just go in there and do this, but he's in his last fight, he's put a guy out in the first round, you know, back-to-back first round clean stoppages inside the Brave cage. And we've seen Irish lads go over to Brave before and be thrown to the wolves and have it not go their way. Gerard Burns is going in, taking out kind of hometown guys. He's going into Slovenia here, getting the win. The crowd, I think I read on one of like the comments of his Instagram page. Look, we were hoping to have Gerard on today because I wanted to ask him about this, but I think there's like his mates went over for a stag do, and like there was a brilliant video put out at the weigh-ins where they're going absolutely nuts. He's bringing a crowd with him, and he's making a name for himself. And another, he seems to be like the leading charge of the FAI flyweights. He's like the king of the flyweights in FAI, and my God, he looks a talent. So I'm very much looking to see what happens next. Is it a case he's going fighting for a Brave title? But also, say 3 fights from now, where does he end up?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I tell you, he's definitely going in the right direction when you're going out there and getting finishes in the flyweight division. There are not too many flyweights that are out there doing that right now. So fair play to Gerard. Great win. Very exciting kind of future for him. And like Andy, you said very well, leading the charge on a number of talented Irish flyweights that are coming up through the scene right now. So definitely himself and Gerard Harris, I would say, are up there as the 2 big flyweight prospects. I'll go over to you just to speak a little bit about Oktagon, Caoilte. Obviously, we had a couple of guys fighting there, Shamrock, Will Fleury, Denis Frimpong as well. Let's start with Denis's fight over Callum Mullen. No, let's start at the top. Let's start with Will Fleury. A good win for Will Fleury. A tumultuous last year for him, of course, obviously with the drugs ban being out. Coming in here, performing against Daniel Skivor, picking up a second round submission with a head and arm choke. A great performance, dropped him in the first round, but you know, comes out after the fight and says he's done it. He broke his thumb sparring against Sean Strickland 2 weeks before the fight, which puts a cherry on the top of the cake for me for that performance as well. The fact that, you know, he was able to go in there. Don't know, maybe it was Dr. Nick that was doing the medical checks there at Oktagon. I'm not too sure how he did with a broken hand, but fair play to him. He got through, but really great win for Will. Great to see him back. Good emotional kind of post-fight interview as well. And, you know, it's good to see him back, I think, in winning ways. And he's an exciting fighter, and he's going to cause a good bit of a stir in that light heavyweight division in Oktagon, I would reckon.
Definitely will. He's going to give the person doing the censorship on Channel 4, if it's still on Channel 4, a tough job and not dropping all those F-bombs in the post-fight interview. But look, before he even mentioned the thumb, I sat there thinking he's just a level above this lad, a complete level above, to be very honest. Took him down with ease, looked strong on the feet against him, and yeah, your man just did not seem to have much form, to be honest. And Will was on top of him in the ground. I thought it was going to be over any second. It was dominant, as you like. There was a few small little exchange near the end when Will dropped him. That took me by a massive surprise, given your man's credentials in kickboxing. And then as soon as round 2 came around, I was just waiting for the finish to happen. What a performance to debut in Oktagon with. It's a way to make a statement against the lad who was, ranked 5th in the for Oktagon before.
Yeah.
I think once he's back from, and to do it with the thumb that we find out after the fight, look, when he's back after the surgery that he's gotten, I think he's probably on a title charge by the end of the year, to be very honest. I don't know if there's many in that division.
If not a title charge, a title shot next, really, Andy, is what you could be talking about for Will Fleury. You did an excellent interview with Will, kind of breaking down what the last year was like, obviously with the drugs ban and everything like that, and he gave you some great stuff, and you did an excellent job in that interview as well to kind of make sure that no stone was left unturned. And you could see the emotions were high in that interview. You can see the emotions were high after this. It was after this fight for Will, and you know, he was fighting a bigger fight than the actual fight in the cage, I think, overall, Will. And just curious to hear your thoughts on the performance and everything that has been going on with Will as well.
Yeah, I thought it was a great performance. I think, as you said, like he kind of had to address the drugs ban. Like I think that was a necessary step for him to try and endear himself to the public again, or at least to a portion of the public who maybe had lost not interest, I don't know, but like had felt some sort of way about. Yeah,
there's no point in beating around the bush when you're testing positive for PEDs. It's going to bring you your fair share of criticism, and that's within people's rights to do that. And I think you're right in what you're saying. Will needed to address that. Yeah,
and I think, look, I doubt it's an easy thing to do, but I think he handled it as well as he could have. I thought he was very honest in the interview, and I thought that he addressed it head on. And for me, that's kind of what I needed in order, personally, to be able to cover someone's career. We look, as much as we like the Irish fighters and we have good relationships with them, you have to call it down the middle and call a spade a spade. So. Coming into this fight, Will kind of had a lot of pressure on him because obviously at the handbrake, he's after coming through this thing where he's talking about, after failing the drug test and getting banned, he's like, well, do I even just, what am I doing? Like, do I retire? What do I do? Oktagon have kind of given him this lifeline, I guess, in his career and an opportunity for him to go and create something, because we will have a lot of lads, we'll have a lot of people that will kind of view his career through a tarnished lens now and say, well, it was just the steroids, but he wasn't on steroids for a long while, so I can understand from his perspective how it could be frustrating when you've built your career and at a certain point use steroids, but now you need to move on. So he's come in here and he's done everything that he can do. He's gone in, he's gotten the finish, and I think that he really sets himself up nicely because Oktagon are putting a lot of stock behind him. They seem to be really willing to kind of build around him. I know he spoke to me about maybe not wanting to necessarily just be the guy, the guy bringing the Irish cards, but wants to go into the enemy territory and take out these guys on their home soil. So you've got Carlos Vermola. I'm not sure what the story is with him as far as if he's still fighting. Will was kind of talking about he's retiring, but who's
still
the
up in the
champion
air with him as well. But yeah, there's that big Frankfurt card that's coming up as well in the stadium. I know Will was saying that'd be awesome to try and get into a card of that stature as well. But we were talking about Paul Hughes and the PFL and how good a fit they are for one another. And I think I would say the same thing about Will and Oktagon right now. Just a really good fit for him. Oktagon, they do a great job, and Scott is always reaching out. He's always sharing the links with us. He's always encouraging. Look, at time, MMA is mad. There's lots of stuff to watch, and I would hold my hand up and say I would not have had as much time as I would like to have watched Oktagon, but I did watch that card from top to tail, and I'm very impressed with everything. The production, the commentary, everything as a part of it. They're doing such a great job there, so hopefully they can continue to do it. Didn't look like there was a savage big crowd over there in Birmingham, and that's a pity, all right, for the stature of the show, so maybe they'll have to restructure that a little bit, but what they're not getting in Birmingham, they're getting in mainland Europe for sure. Like, they're still selling out like thousands of tickets in this stadium show and other events as well, so they seem to be doing a couple of things right, and it's good to see Will there in the mix. Like I said, it's either going to be a number one contendership fight or a title fight for Will next, to be honest. I mean, you go out there and you take out the number 5 ranked opponent, you're putting yourself right in the mix, and it's good to see Will back.
To do that, to underline, because I realized I was kind of talking about the interview a lot there, but to go in there and do that with a broken thumb, when he showed me it before we started recording the interview, he was like, look, my hand's fucked, basically. It looked in a bad way. So I can't comprehend going into a fist fight against another man where one of your hands is already broken before you even enter it. That's a very difficult thing to do. So if he's able to go in and do that,
you think about a hand you're punching, but you're not. You're also posting on that. You need it for grip, for your grappling. I mean, it takes fair play to him for going.
And he
in
said in the post-fight interview that it was the most nervous he's ever been for a fight. So, you know, to go in there and do that with one hand, it bodes well for what he can potentially do with two working hands moving forward in the promotion.
100%. Denis Frimpong got picked up another great win on the card as well. Caoilte against Callum Mullen. Honestly, I was going to say a lot of shit talk before the fight, but that's a Denis Frimpong fight. That's kind of part and parcel of what you're going to get with Denis anyway. He brings the heat before the fight starts, that mental kind of approach. And it worked. I mean, he's a decent striker, a dangerous striker, and Callum Mullen tried to close the distance and take the fight down. And I think that would be to no surprise of Denis Frimpong heading in there. He defended the takedowns well. He was landing damage well off his back. And obviously when he was on the feet, he was the better of the two strikers. He was using his distance and his reach excellently well. And, a great performance from Denis, and he moves on as well, hoping for a big show as well. And, he's fighting his way into those kind of opportunities now.
Yeah, I think you said before, he doesn't have any time to waste. He's trying to get there as quick as possible, and get the big fights, make a name. And he certainly made a name for himself in there between the shit talk outside the cage. He also does a bit of it inside the cage. I think we saw it in that Callum Mullen fight. He likes it's funny like that. It's not something you see every day, but he's improving with every fight too. I think there's shades of difference of that fight compared to the George Staines fight in terms of the takedown defense, his ability to get back to the feet and kind of implement his game plan a little bit better. And Callum Mullen didn't really do all that much with the takedowns either, and he wasn't really offering much to Denis. I thought Denis was kind of in cruise control for a while. I think Luke Barnett was on the commentary, and he was quite critical, maybe a little bit critical at times about what he'd like to see from Denis next in terms of step up or what he needs to do here and there. Because I'd agree with the fact that he could potentially finish fights at times. And that might be the missing piece to get to pushing on that little bit further and getting a bigger fight. But look, dominant performance, did really well and backed up all the talk. That's all you got to do.
Absolutely. Any quick thoughts on that, Andy?
Yeah, it was damage. Like Mullen did nothing. He controlled the fight for a lot of the fight, but a lot of the contest, but he just did really nothing with it. And I watched, you were talking about like the production stuff that they have. They put out brilliant content. I watched the face to face ahead of the fight between the two of them and Luke Barnett sitting in the middle of them. And, Mullen's kind of saying, I'm going to walk through your punches and get you in and do this and that. And he just wasn't able to deliver on it. So it was a clean 30-27 in my books, even though Frimpong was controlled. And what I'd love to see, I also noticed the poor Oktagon staff have their hands full with that lad around in the lead up to fights. He's been chirping this this guy for a long time now. So I think if Denis can go in and maybe get a finish or two, that could set up maybe a big fight between those two lads down the road. I think Wanda's is probably a little bit further on in his career than Denis is right now, but that's not to say that he couldn't get that fight with maybe a finish in his next one or the next couple. So
fucking sure to put him in there the last time in the nearly 20 fight veteran.
That's true, actually. Yeah, that's true.
I mean,
so maybe they just make it.
Maybe they do, but
they kind of lean into the reality TV show stuff as well, aren't they?
Yeah, I would agree with you. I would agree with I think Denis might need one or two more. If we did see him pick up a finish, it might make that fight a little bit more intriguing than it already is. But I'll stick with you, Andy. We'll talk a little bit about Tiarnan Loughran. Andreas Binder over in Amsterdam picked up a win at LFL 12. Tiarnan Loughran took on Ivan Sukogov, won by TKO in the second round. Probably should have been a first round TKO. I'm sure you'll talk about that as well. Very bad refereeing. And Andreas Binder going in against Victor Cuckoo picked up a third round submission via rear naked choke. A good challenge for Andreas Binder. I think rather than bunch these two in together, I'm going to talk to you about Tiarnan Loughran first, and then maybe we'll speak about Andreas Binder after that then. Andy, your thoughts? That was a good performance from Tiarnan. I was speaking to him after the fight. He always seems that he could give a little bit more. He's very hard on himself, but as a professional debut, I think he showed some good striking on the feet, took the fight down and dominated. And in reality, like I said, should have had the first round finish, really.
Yeah, I love seeing a fighter like that where they've gone in and completely dominated and then they're being hard on themselves. It's like, that's a lad who'll go far. Tiarnan Loughran, in reality, it was a complete mismatch of a fight in the end. Like, as far as Loughran just dominated him. I counted something like 100 unanswered shots. It was around 100 unanswered shots in the first round. It was a joke, in my opinion, that it wasn't stopped. And I know some of them are not, necessarily landing clean. They're landing on the guard, etc. But that's not intelligent defense if you're just shelled up, taking shot after shot after shot. And this young lad's only 18 that he was fighting as well. So you've a guy who's taken an unnecessary amount of shots and a ref who's doing absolutely nothing to do anything about it, and to the point where the commentators are kind of joking around in between rounds, like kind of understandably being like, how quick before he just takes him down again and smashes him, and that's in the end what happened. But that aside, Loughran's performance was brilliant. I thought that he went out there. It looked to me like he was trying to get some experience in his striking, because we've seen him in the amateur scene going in there, picking his timing, taking lads down and smashing them on the ground. I think he wanted to go out here and play around on the feet and maybe even get a finish on the feet. But he decided, at a certain point, I see an opening here, tactically level change, take the fight to the ground and dominate from there. So I thought it was a very high IQ fight from him and utter domination, and I'm really looking forward to his next one.
As a Mike Caoilte, I'm sure you were just as impressed with Tiarnan, eh?
Yeah, completely. Lucky. I think he looked good in the feet. He was hard himself afterwards, but in terms of, he seemed a level above the lad, and when it came to, he could take him down whenever he wanted to. I just think he was able to be patient with it and kind of experiment a little bit in there and try some things that maybe he wouldn't have got a chance in amateur, experience those 5-minute rounds. Probably should have been a first round finish, as Andy said. Terrible refereeing, no other words. Quick comment for the corner team. What a corner team, by the way. Paul Hughes and Tiarnan Loughran in your corner. Like, wow, when that came out, I was thinking, that's pretty cool right there. But no, brilliant for Tiarnan. Great to see him in the win column, and interested to see if he stays with NFL for his next fight.
Indeed. I'll stay with you, Caoilte. Andreas Binder took on Victor Cuckoo, second round submission, as I said at the start of the segment. Just an important win for Andreas Binder with everything that's been going on with the weight misses. I can't imagine what would have been going on with him mentally, and started off this fight. Victor Cuckoo was showing some decent striking on the feet there, and we were chatting throughout this fight, and I immediately said, I was like, Jesus, like you could see, and Andreas said it after the fight, he was struggling to find his distance and his range, but that was because Cuckoo was making it difficult for him on the feet, and very, very tricky customer. And I had said to you lads when we were talking during it, is that he needs to take this fight down, and he did eventually, and it did hurt him obviously on the feet in the second round as well, but ultimately got the takedown, got the submission, and was absolutely delighted, Caoilte, to get that win in round 3 over Cuckoo was Andreas Binder. Your thoughts on the performance itself?
Yeah, it was a weird one, to be honest. The fight itself, like, striker versus grappler in terms of how the fight played out. This Victor Cuckoo lad, glory kickboxer, and he has that type of MVP style in the cage when it comes to MMA. Very hard to find your range. He throws these random strikes. He's quite unpredictable and looks like he can cause a lot of damage. Did look like he tired out quite quickly and didn't have much grappling, but it just didn't seem like Andreas was able to figure him out for all that while, and until he managed to get the takedowns. And when he did, that was key. He needed them. I think he would have been at risk of getting caught with one of those big shots otherwise. And when he did, look, we saw he managed to get the submission, managed to get the win, and that was the most important thing. But very dangerous fight, and I think it's one he's gonna have to learn from, because that lad showed how dangerous the welterweight division can be, and against lads who are going to be a bit, I guess, upper level in the PFL, I think it's going to be very tough.
In the course of the fight, Andy, as we've seen it going on, obviously we saw Andreas getting an absolute scutcheon in the corner from Paul Fogarty. We were all about that too.
Do your fucking come on! Do your fucking told!
I'll tell you one thing, I wouldn't want to be getting on the wrong side of that fella. What?
He's only a pussycat, that Paul Fogarty lad.
No, look, sometimes fighters need that, and definitely that reaction brought the reaction out of Andreas to go on and get the win. And look, no matter what way the fight went, no matter how happy or how unhappy he was at his performance, you know what, at the end of the day, what the most important thing was for Andreas Binder in that fight was going out there and getting the win, no matter how he got it done. And he managed to do that. And it must have been a massive, you could see how much of a relief it was and how emotional he was after the fight, because, you know, he was saying that he almost, you know, on death's door with weight cuts, and obviously fighters' health, we don't want to see any fighters putting themselves through that. And, you know, it must be difficult when you're going through that, when you love doing what you do, to maybe have the thought process that you might not be able to do it again with weight cuts and everything like that. But he was very glad to get back in there, get the win, and you could see it after the fight.
Yeah, absolutely. Like this was about going in and having a professional week where you make weight, you put on a good performance, and like, I'd say he was a bit of a mindfuck as well throughout the fight, because firstly, we haven't talked about the fact that Cuckoo, like, just, it seemed like he had disappeared before the fight, where everyone's like, and now Victor Cuckoo, and it was just silence, and everyone's like, so where the fuck is this lad? And now Victor Cuckoo, and he comes in dancing away, and like, you know, I don't know. I didn't look up any tape on this lad beforehand. I imagine Andreas did, but so he probably may have had a sense. But you look at his record on paper, he's 15 and 18, I think at the time, and you're thinking, okay, you know, he's probably not going to be up to a whole lot. But you get in the cage, and it's like, this lad he's got a bit about him on the feet. He's a tricky customer. He's an awkward range, and that's probably a little bit like, you know, when the striking exchanges are maybe going how you planned, and then all of a sudden you could potentially be down around, you know, going into the second, being like, what the hell is going on here? This was a fight week where I needed everything to go my way.
It's also a thing, like, when you can't find your range in there, and Andreas was trying to get off his jab and he couldn't do it. It's frustrating too, and you can kind of feed into that frustration. But I think the word you used there was professional, and it's a really good word, and that's what Andreas remained in that fight, and that's ultimately what got him to win too. Like, yeah,
and like, he did then what he needed to do, and like, fair play, like, Fogarty drew something out of him with that pep talk in between rounds. But Andreas went out there and he implemented the correct game plan then for the rest of the fight, where he didn't bother, you know, entertaining Cuckoo on the feet, and says, I'm going to go in here, punch him in the face, close the distance, and take him down. And then ultimately, once he was able to do that, he was able to take over the fight. And then in the third round, he gets a submission win, and it's job done. It's, you know, he's on the cage celebrating the relief. He's back in the win column. He's made the weight. He's shown that he can have a professional fight week, and now can go back and, you know, get back to where he was. Because it's sad, because Andreas was on such a brilliant string of momentum in the lead up to the PFL run, and then obviously it got derailed a little bit with the whole weight misses. So I'd love to see him get back to where he was. And yeah, look, he's going to come up against a lot tougher competition, but at the same time, Cuckoo was a tricky customer here. So he needed that win. He needed that fight week. And look, onwards and upwards for Andreas Binder, fingers crossed.
100%, yeah, very well said. Looking forward to his next one. Looking ahead, a couple of fights were announced since we were last on. Let's run through them rather quickly as we wrap up the episode today. I'll start off just announcing a couple of fights that have been announced. Mateus Sarovs versus Lewis McGrillen for that PFL Europe card. That is a fucking banger, guys. That was the one. That's the one that I officially announced last year, and it fell through at the last minute. But I'm glad that we do get to see it sooner rather than later.
They paid up this time, clearly.
They did, yeah, they did. I wasn't touching that with a 10-foot pole before it was officially announced this time. Dylan Tuke versus Kane Musa. That's a good fight for Dylan Tuke. A tough test in Kane Musa. Dylan looking. He's looking more and more like a lightweight every time I see him posting up there. He's bulking up something serious, and I'm very excited to see him in there against Kane Musa. We had brand new signings for Cage Warriors for Jordan O'Neill, Matthew Elliott, Emer Darcy, all signed multi-fight deals for Cage Warriors. Brilliant news. Dee Begley has been announced for the PFL flyweight tournament. I know she's been matched up now. She has
the two matches. So it's so Dee Begley's taking on Paulina Wisniewska. Hopefully, Denny corrects us for that one. on Saturday the 8th of June in Newcastle. So that's the quarterfinal of the PFL Europe flyweight tournament, and then Valentina Scatizzi is on the other half or the other side of the bracket. Or obviously your teammate in SPG.
Look at you salivating at them out with the thoughts of two teammates fighting, Andy. Look at you.
Well, they won't be unless they both get to the final.
Well, a lot of things got to go their way, that's for sure.
But Scatizzi taking on Marie Loiseau. Now look, on Scatizzi's side of the bracket, you've got Chanel Dyer. So they may meet in the semi-finals, and on D's side of the bracket, you've got Sammy Joe Luxon, who a lot of people are high on as well. Obviously, comes from a Thai boxing background, so there's stiff competition in this. But yeah, great to see them in there.
100%. Exciting signings for Cage Warriors too. Jordan O'Neill, Matthew Elliott, and Emer Darcy as well. Caoilte, three top prospects there getting signed up, and it'd be great to see them in regular action in the yellow gloves.
Love it, yeah, great to see. Signing Emer Darcy kind of shows a bit of commitment to kind of building a women's division, which is great to see from Cage Warriors. They've been showing glimpses of it for a while, so that's brilliant to see, especially after a performance in Dublin. So good to see who they give her next. Matt Elliott, I think he's earned it. Who knows, maybe he gets prize. I'd love to see him get prize fighter or something along the lines like that. And then Jordan O'Neill, we've been waiting to see him in those yellow gloves for quite some time now. I think it's frustrating, kind of waiting for it, but hopefully soon, and hopefully a few this year, because he's a top prospect that we're all aware of.
100% fantastic last name too, if I do say so myself. Stephen Costello will be going to fight for the welterweight title against Alexander Mikel. That's on the 1st of June in Tenerife. Obviously, we'll talk. Hopefully, we'll try and get Stephen on, maybe here or on another platform as well, ahead of that fight. Big fight for him, fighting for the title. Your guy Martin McNulty. I know everyone's been talking about Martin McNulty lately. He's back in action on Hexagon on May 24th in France. Another interesting fight for him. Upcoming fights that we do have on the May 4th, it's this weekend coming. John Mitchell is back in action at 971 FC in Dubai. That's a weird name for a promotion.
I think his gym in Dubai is 971 MMA. So I'm assuming they're just running a show.
Makes sense. He's up there close to the top of the bill. Not too sure. He was injured. I was chatting to him a little while ago. He said he's obviously recovering. Not too sure. Maybe this is just a one fight deal outside of his PFL contract. Maybe I should touch base with him and see what's going on there. I'm not really too sure. Andy kind of has a little bit of a snigger on his face here, like he does know something.
What is there anything to be said for John Mitchell versus Paul Hughes?
Oh, yeah, Jesus.
Andy's.
My Irish MMA horn is after rising.
If you keep matching up Irish versus Irish guys, we'll have nobody to talk about here. We'll just take each other out.
Civil war.
Andy is trying to create a civil war here. It's fucking insane. Yeah, well, I don't mind it.
I'm just throwing in grenades anyway. Let's
throw Dario Sinagoga over in my neck of the woods will be fighting on BFL for the 165-pound title against Rodrigo Cezinado at BFL 80 World War. Very apt name for what's going on really in real life right now. But yeah, and then on back home on Irish soil, we've got Chaos FC 23 Caoilte, and top of the bill on this one, Jake Nye versus Owen Massoliver. What's your thoughts on that fight, or is there any other things that's sticking out to you on the rest of the card?
You can't look past that one. That's class. Yeah. Top notch matchmaking from Chaos there. It's not a catchweight, but look, doesn't really matter. I'm just happy the fight's going ahead. I think it's an absolute cracker. I think there's going to be some wild grappling exchanges there. Two really high level lads. It's brilliant. Two of the top prospects in the country at amateur going up against each other, headline the card, and flyweight division aren't so exciting, lads. So I'm buzzing for that. I think outside of that, there's a few other fights I'm looking at here. Jed Paolo versus Michael Connolly, Ben Johnson versus Sean Kelly. I think that's a great fight as well. But Chaos always have a fairly decent card now, so I'm looking forward to this one. Yeah,
100%. 4 title fights, or 5 title fights, six title fights, 1 teen and 4 amateur title fights as well. A little bit of a flyweight tournament as well going down there, I believe. So A very good night of action there at Chaos, and we'll talk about that a little bit more obviously on the next episode, the L Triangle. Anything else? Anything that I missed? Normally this is where Andy comes in saying that I've missed something.
I don't think so.
One last thing.
I'm not going to lose my job as the host.
I
I'm
need
forgetting
to
anything.
say one last thing about something, so I'll have to come up with it in a minute. I don't know.
But from away until Caoilte, we're ready to Nathan Kelly. Did we talk about Nathan Kelly the last time? He's been matched up for the Dublin card.
We did. The Fabakari Diada, is that the one?
Yeah, that's a good fight for him. I like that.
That is honestly incredibly impressive that I remember that name.
Yeah, it's fucking unreal. Even if you were wrong, I was still
he's fighting that lad. Whoever I just said, he's fighting that lad.
What is his name again? Yes, well,
I don't know if we spoke about it, but Pedro's the stoppage in that fight.
Jesus,
I think just before we finish up, Pedro's fight. Everyone wants to share their thoughts on how that was.
Well, it was 100% an early stoppage for sure. Yeah. Geez, I can't believe we had that written down. I totally forgot about that. I mean, that was, it was a good fight. I was looking forward to it. Came out, got caught early. I was, we were chatting about how did stylistically match up, and I thought Pedro, obviously, I would have had the power advantage, but from a technical point perspective, it's very hard to kind of come in and compete against a guy like Brendan Loughnane, who moves very well around there, and he clipped Pedro very, very early, and Pedro didn't really recover. But I mean, I would have been maybe not as criticized. I wouldn't have as much criticism over the stoppage if it was stopped maybe 5 or 10 seconds before it was actually stopped. But Pedro was actively trying to get back to his feet. He was moving, and it robs Pedro of a true outcome. It robs Brendan Loughnane of a true outcome. It robs the fans of a true outcome. And it was a massive, massive cock up by, I think it was Kevin MacDonald, who was the referee on the night, who went and apologised to Pedro after the fact. Caoilte, you brought it up. I'll bring it over to you for your thoughts on it. I'm sure you probably agree with most of what was said already.
Yeah, there's not really much more. It's just it was a really weird one. It's good to hear that, Kevin MacDonald, he went backstage, apologised to Pedro from the post Pedro put up anyway. I think it's a bit of a balls because obviously we don't get to see maybe a true reflection of how everything could have played out, and it could have caught maybe you can't. There's lots of ifs, buts, and maybes. There's no point in going into them, to be very honest.
An early stoppage just brings ifs and buts, and that's unfortunate, Andy, isn't it? And I mean, it's very detrimental now, really. A loss is always disappointing, but a loss in this kind of setting is it all but rules Pedro out of making a playoff spot for this year's tournament as well, which will be a massive blow to him and the chance for him to win a 1 million. I mean, decisions like that was, Kevin MacDonald is a good ref, and I know that he apologised, but that doesn't matter a fuck to Pedro right now, because that's going to hit him in the pocket. Mistakes are more costly in that kind of a setting, and unfortunately it did have to happen to Pedro.
Yeah, and John McCarthy kind of said it in the moment on comms that or I think they went to him, right, because he's in that kind of that role that the kind of I'm still
the old bullshit
efficient role, whatever. But he was kind of saying exactly, it's you're fighting for $1 million. Would you not let it go a little bit longer? And as Pedro was going for a single leg or a double leg, he was trying to grab it at Loughnane's legs. Loughnane felt stumbled backwards. That would have provided Pedro an opportunity to get back to his feet. And look, make no mistake, Loughnane was winning that fight. I really feel when he caught the body kick and landed that right cross, that was kind of the beginning of the end in the end for this fight. But at the same time, it was 100% an early stoppage. So it's just really, really unfortunate. And it's you don't want to see fighters take damage, but it's not he wasn't out. He wasn't. If he had taken a few more, at least, I don't know. It was an early stoppage like that. It's just
early stoppage is an early stoppage, and it's disappointing. And look, Pedro will be back. He'll fight again, but he's going to have to go out there and get a first round. Hopefully, the way PFL line up fights. Hopefully, they give him a fight that would give him a good chance of going out there and picking up a first round stoppage, getting at least 6 points, maybe putting himself back into the mix as well. But that's it. We ended on a sad note for Pedro. But
I do have one more thing. I do one more thing, but I forgot because I checked the notes again. Sarah Elliott Sheridan was in action. Was in amateur, she was supposed to be in amateur action this weekend, or just gone in Austria. based on the videos that herself and Andreeas was over cornering her, put up, the fight was pulled with 20 minutes to go. She had her hands wrapped, ready to go, warming up in the back. And there was a health issue, I guess, with her opponent. Just a very, very bizarre set of circumstances here. And obviously pretty unfortunate when, there's a lot of fights you can probably get on the amateur scene in Ireland and in the UK. You travel over on a couple of days' notice to go to Austria. And then you don't even get to fight, and you don't find it, nothing comes up at the weigh-ins, nothing comes up in the morning. It's 20 minutes before you're about to get in the cage. And look, these things happen, I guess. And I hope that our opponent's okay. But it's just a very bizarre set of circumstances, and obviously probably a pretty frustrating one for Sarah and the team to be dealing with.
Yeah, definitely. With 20 minutes to go, you're getting into prime fighting mentality too, to be told that you're not. It's kind of a bit of a pisser as well, but yeah.
Also, sorry, I just remember this because we were chatting about this in the group.
Yeah, the press conference.
Weird press conference. No, I actually think we should reference it because you've got some lads kind of propositioning her on a stage, like a male
kind of hitting on her, it was absolutely farcical in my views and very disrespectful. And I thought Sarah handled it very well, to be honest, in the way that she did. But I've never seen anything like that. I was shocked. I had to send it to you straight away when I seen it. A very unprofessional, and they shouldn't be doing that kind of thing. But fair play to Sarah, she handled it like she was basically hit on by one of the MCs of that organization, and I just thought it was wrong, to be honest. Very unprofessional, and
you'd never see it happen to a male MMA fighter.
Never. And but look at these things happen in MMA sometimes, as the lad says. And that wraps us up for episode 56 of the Auld Triangle. Once more, another one in the bag. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Give us a 5-star ratings on Spotify as well. We could do with a few more 5-star ratings on Spotify. If anyone is still listening right now, we can't even get Caoilte to listen to this late in the podcast.
Conor McGregor is our guest next episode too.
Conor McGregor. Maybe I should start saying this at the start instead of the fucking finish. But how's it ever? Caoilte, see us out.
Garry and Machado, agus long go